Hello, and welcome to Woman with Bunny Ears, a Twin Peaks podcast, Season 1, Episode 5, where we will be discussing Kiss Me Deadly. I am your host, the Great What's-It, Flashy Man. Joining me today is my co-host, the head of Medusa, Jason.
Hello.
And Cerberus, barking with all his heads at the gates of hell, Kulak Revolve.
Howdy.
Now, I wanted you guys to see this movie because Kulak, you're always trying to get me to see terribly gory and horrifying movies. And so I thought I would show you the most shocking movie of 1955 that was specifically condemned by a congressional committee for being too cool. And that is Kiss Me Deadly.
It certainly was shocking for 1955.
Yeah.
Actually, not that, mind you, not that shocking by the standards of films from the 30s that we have also watched.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Jason and I saw Freaks from 33, which is quite the film.
Yeah, I guess
Still shocks people.
I guess it wouldn't so much be about pure shock value as it would be about how the main character of Kiss Me Deadly is kind of like this sleazy guy, and everyone's constantly giving each other knowing kisses and whatnot, and performing feats of violence to get their ways and things like that.
You see, I didn't read that as like much of a real departure from the genre. Like it was a bit more explicit, a bit like maybe more explicit with the consequences and like the emotional toll it has on them. But in terms of like, I didn't really see where this was much a departure from Humphrey Bogart's films or how he treats women in like The Big Sleep.
Yeah, I think you have a point there because they were still under the sway of the code, the film code. I don't actually know much about this period of film history, but like nobody in this movie is like, and then you have sex with them. No one's ever going to say that, you know? They're always like, and then you get some evidence as a private detective.
No, like there was hinting at casual sex in like Bogart's line of work, but the interesting thing with the main character in this is just Mike Hammer, porn name if there ever was one. The main thing with him in this is just how women react to him. Like they aren't just kind of effortlessly charmed with him. They're kind of like the women he's known for a while are emotionally torn by him, and like the shocking thing about it in terms of the sexuality isn't like the implied arousal and all of that. It's the implied like consequences of relationships.
So maybe this would provide a great moral to the youth of America by telling them, hey, actions have consequences.
Yeah, no, it was like it's still you watch how he treats what's her name? Zelda?
I think it's Velda, yeah.
Yeah, Velda, and how he emotionally exploits her, and it's like that's actually still like kind of shocking today. Not from like it's not as if he's abusing her or like it's anything shocking to do with the scene. It's just like the power dynamic. It's something that isn't depicted, especially for like a main character and like sidekick, like the kind of hero detective, to be doing that to someone is still shocking, and I can see see how the censors at the time would have been disturbed by it, but it wasn't breaking any of the rules.
Interesting.
No, I'm actually still kind of surprised that you think that the sexuality was a source of sensorial concern. I would have figured the kind of Red Scare plot and the theming around that would have been far more on Congress's mind than the mere sex panic. Like this was 53, 55, 55. So
Yeah.
this was within a decade of the Rosenbergs trial and execution and the theft of of atomic secrets by the Soviet Union. Like this, like the main plot of this is incredibly geopolitically pressing, and then to have that ending, which apparently it was originally cut down, which is like a shame because just the original ending that screened in cinemas cut off the final cut where where Max and Velda escape the house and are in the surf almost like biblical characters before a city that's being destroyed, and just watching the house burn down with whatever strange fissile material is in it, and wondering what they've unleashed on the world. But apparently the original edit just had the house burning down, supposedly with them in it, which really kind of undermines the theming, kind of that, because Lovecraftian horror, the encounter with the unknown, like you need to be alive, witnessing and understanding and not understanding.
I think I might be able to correct you a bit. I think the original ending has them going out into the surf and stuff, and then like in certain distributions of it, that part of the ending was lost, and it's just the house on fire. And then in the version we watched, they were like, "Oh, we found the original ending again. We put it back in."
All
So
right.
yeah, but people
So that might have
definitely.
just been like a roll of film getting cut off and then that becoming the released edit.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. But yeah, but I don't think they would be particularly worried about, they don't censor movies just for being a downer, or nor do they condemn them for going and depicting nuclear espionage particularly.
Well, was this was after the Hayes Code had pretty much broken. You could get away with crazy amounts, and then of course later into the 60s and 70s, you could get away with everything. You could get away with stuff you couldn't today. But it was heavily criticized by the military because they were very keen to say that no, this couldn't happen. A rogue colonel couldn't escalate things to the brink of World War III. No, this couldn't happen. None of this is realistic. We don't have everything riding on the sanity of a few officers. And then 20, 30 years later, it came out. Stuff was declassified, and it turned out it kind of was. It was kind of halfway between what we depicted and what the military was saying. But it was like, well, Kubrick was gesturing at something, but the military was intensely concerned to like protect their image with regards to that and control the narrative, and especially with regards to nuclear weapons, their positioning of we are in control, we know what we're doing, we have this tactical control of things, this strategic control was so important to them, even for like a comedy where a soldier refuses to smash a vending machine because it would violate the Coca-Cola Corporation's property. Right, it's like a comedy that intense where at the end, they're still concerned about that, still releasing statements, still intensely concerned with how it affects their image, and whether there's a strategic concern with that or just a concern with their relation to Washington. So for this to come out 7 years after the Rosenbergs, and to be about not just atomic secrets but actually secret fissile materials and devices, the head of the Medusa itself in a box being stolen by the Russians, and the cops being helpless to stop it, and the military allowing it to get to that point. Like I would have thought that would have been far more of the concern, especially in 50s America.
Well, you
Were
have
they
a lot to
Russians?
learn. What was
Were
it?
they Russians?
Were they Russians? It's not specified, but that is, I guess, the natural conclusion to draw here in the 50s
This
and
is
something.
50s. This is 50s America, Jason. They don't try. They don't believe the Chinese are capable of this.
But he could have been selling that box to, or trading it, or dropping it off, or whatever, to anyone. It never got that far, but we can sort of assume it's Russians. Although
I think I'm
maybe the
just.
Russians could make their own. Who knows?
I mean, the 70s and 80s, you had a few other actors that might try
I
it.
don't like them like even existing in the world of this movie. I like the sort of mythological vibe it has. It's like if I think of them wanting to sell it to the Russians, it just kind of it brings everything down to earth. It kind of ruins the Lovecraftian feeling you were talking about there. I like it just being this kind of mystery thing and not knowing what the man's motivations were.
No, you are right about that. Like it does have like a mythical quality. Like if and they never say what's in the box. So as far as we know, it's the
Right.
Necronomicon, and it's the cult of the Cthulhu trying to get the book.
The closest they come is the like police officer character says like, I'm gonna say some words to you. Los Alamos, Trinity test, etc. And that's how we get our
Well,
reveal.
he says something. It's like they're just sounds or something, but their meaning entertaining is important. And I think that was sort of, I don't know exactly what to make of that statement, but it kind of seems to play on the mystery, or kind of play on the, let's say, the box's construction in the story, where, it's not important what makes it up. It's just, a device, let's say, but the implications behind it are important, and then it's analogical to that.
Yeah, and one of the words is Manhattan Project, which is like 10, 12 years before this. So he's like, it's very much him gesturing at a concept vaguely, or like a scale, than he is like trying to say specifically what it is.
I don't know if this was the movie's intention, but I sort of assumed that like he legally is not allowed to say we are hunting down nuclear fissible material. It is a state secret. Cease your investigations. And so he has to be like, what if I just said some sounds to you? Los Alamos,
Yeah, no, exactly. Like he can't tell him what it is, and it's very clearly like there isn't fissile material that combusts and just gets hotter and hotter on contact with air or oxygen. There's some chemicals like phosphorus that do that aren't really important or that impressive, aside from like their small arms
Are you
use. But like,
questioning the scientific veracity of Kiss Me Deadly? This is unthinkable.
This is an anti-scientist podcast.
Freaking magnets. How do they
Hey,
work?
that's a deep question. They get too much shit for that.
Trust me, I'm sure Fauci has like 4 of these littered around his house, but like the significance obviously isn't that there's a specific isotope or whatever that behaves this way or that they're gesturing at. The point is that it's just this great unknown, or this new technological leap that they've stumbled into, and even Mike instantly burning his hand, but he
Right.
doesn't have radiation poisoning.
Well, we
But
don't know
maybe that radiation poisoning, like if you get a large dose of radiation, like it's like having burns over a percentage of your body. It knocks you out, makes you sick. Like you're down for a few weeks on your ass, and then it either kills you, or it's like, okay, you're done with the radiation poisoning. You're gonna want to have cancer screenings like every 6 months for the rest of your life. But
They used to use I think it was the uranium as just kind of like doorstops in Los Alamos. They were just like super careless with it, and I think it's like, I don't think radiation was that poorly understood then. I think they just kind of didn't give a fuck, and then they all got cancer.
Well, uranium, like most common uranium isotopes, like the kind of uranium you mine out of the ground and then you have to refine to turn into like 235, or like the ones that are useful for like reactors or explosives. Like most of the isotopes along that path aren't really that radioactive. Like for God's sakes, don't eat it, but like standing in a room next to it, you're fine.
Right.
Probably wear some like surgical gloves if you're handling it, just so if you have a cut, you don't get it in your bloodstream. But like it's not like, my impression is like you can have a massive rock of uranium as like a paperweight or like a conversation piece, and it probably won't and almost certainly won't increase the radiation levels in the room like above that if your house just happened to be another 100 meters above sea level.
In college, they just like, there was some lab I was doing, and we were always checking the radiation in the room before we went in. But they just gave me like thick oven mitts, and then the professor wouldn't even use them after a while. I think I know one time I dropped it or something really stupid, and he just kind of grabbed it and stuck it back in like the little metal container. He's like, yeah, whatever. Just don't leave your hand there for a long time.
Well, it takes so much to like raise radiation levels like 2 to 4 times above background. Whereas like if you're on a plane, that's 4 times above background. Like you're exposed, like even people who work in nuclear labs like are exposed to vastly more radiation like flying home for Christmas than they are working in the lab. For the most part, some people work with insane stuff that could kill them instantly, and they need like 20 safety courses before they're allowed allowed to work there, but that's the exception.
The box in Kiss Me Deadly reminded me somewhat of the demon core that they worked on at Los Alamos, which was just like a uranium core, or perhaps it was plutonium core of some kind. They were just keeping it around to, do tests on. And apparently it's very hard to be perfect all of the time. So it ended up killing some people when they mishandled it. And I suppose that's the sort of thing that would have to be in that box, except an even spookier version, because I think the demon core would just kill you silently or kiss you deadly, as it were.
Well, the thing in the box really doesn't make sense in a lot of ways.
Makes sense cinemagraphically.
Well, I
It
think
keeps getting hotter and hotter, but at a slow pace when exposed to air, which oxygen doesn't affect radioactivity at all.
Maybe there was some sort of buffer gas, and it was just let out of the box. That's my
I
explanation.
think the
Maybe.
nonsensicality of it, it better captures, if they had explicitly said it was radiation or it hinted more nuclear things, then I think that would not have captured the alien horror of the reality of nuclear weapons, because they really are just something that was not imaginable. It's just it just kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't something people expected. Just somewhere, in the 20s, people were like, "Oh yeah, this is possible. We could, level the entire world now." And I think even now we haven't fully processed it. There was this kind of atomic paranoia, and that's kind of gone away. But we don't have a means of coping with it or understanding it. We just kind of don't think about it, pretend it's not there. But if they had said in us trying to figure out the scientific mechanics of it, or it's this mystery and we're trying to systematize it, we're detectives trying to probe this thing, but it is something that's fundamentally unknowable in its essence. I mean, we don't. There's no way we could comprehend the apocalypse like that. It's something for the realm of the gods, which is why everything is couched in mythological terms, and why the movie mostly leaves you in the dark the entire time. Or it all plays in there, and I think just the fact that it's just so fucking freaky, that captures nuclear weapons way better than if that was actually uranium or something, or if it was a bomb that blew up when she opened it. That would have been lame.
Yeah, no, the properties of it are actually really good as a mystery item, because it doesn't really accord with anything else. It's not a chemical thing. It's not really doesn't really behave like radiological stuff. It's just all these mystery magical properties that's you're seeing a phenomenon. You're seeing a phenomenon that isn't understood, and there's maybe 20 people in the world who would be able to tell what all this means. That's that on the edge of understanding, which is interesting, because all those properties of it's horrifying, but yet what does it mean? But yet could anyone know what it means? It's also paralleled heavily in the mystery. I think it was Hank Linkus saying that a lot of the sociological stuff that Max encounters throughout his investigation, the one girl is the roommate who turns out not to be the roommate, is played up to be kind of a stimulant addicts, early amphetamines, wouldn't be meth, but some kind of 50s amphetamine that was legal to buy and abuse, or the figure of the doctor whose ethnicity is mysterious and you never see his face, and all these seemingly interconnected conspiracies, and you don't really know if the cops are in on it or what's going on there. The ethnic angle of tracking down all these Italians who are obsessed with their records and stuff, and this is back when Italians are still that mysterious Innsmouthian weird ethnicity that Americans don't grasp, and no one's actually eaten at an Italian restaurant at this point. All those attributes of a bizarre otherness lead down this well to the box, and then it's all compounded upon itself with what's in the box.
Here's a hot reading. One of the main themes of the movie is sort of the danger and the recklessness of the investigation, where the Hammer endangers all of his friends and just kind of treats them instrumentally because he has to get to the bottom of this mystery. He has to find out what's going on, and the entire time he's getting these just insane otherworldly things that are beyond his pay grade, telling him, do not investigate this, do not look into it, please stop, and he does it anyways, and then he gets a bunch of his friends killed. And I think you could read all of that as tying into sort of the dangers of scientific investigation, as perhaps the workings of nature are something above us, and we were not meant to go there and find this mystery, and it was some reckless male spirit inside of science that drove us to discover this great secret that we should not have access to. It would be better off if we did not know how to destroy the world.
Yeah, there's definitely something there mapping the scientific quest for knowledge onto the classic detective's quest for knowledge, and you'd already seen this with hard-boiled detective fiction, like The Big Sleep and a bunch of other kind of detective stories had inverted the classic Agatha Christie Sherlock Holmes formula, where instead of the detective going through all this and then because he discovered the truth, everything goes back together perfectly and justice prevails and order is reestablished. Instead, it's like peeling back the layers of a rotten onion and just finding this black core where nothing is improved, and maybe you discover the truth, but it was something you didn't want to know, or you discover the truth, but nothing can be fixed. Anyway, like you kind of see that with 40s detective fiction, that kind of hinting at that deconstruction of the detective narrative and the assumption of the quest for truth and the quest for justice and the quest for redemption all being one and the same. But this one really impressively maps onto the scientific pursuit and then takes it to what I can only describe as Lovecraftian levels.
Did you guys? I was trying to figure out in the movie, they make a lot of references, mostly early on, to resurrection. And at the start of the movie, he dies basically, and then he comes back to life. And then this sort of happens again with the truth serum part. And the best way I can figure the resurrection, at least like just in the terms you were just describing, that made me think that it reminded me of a line. Well, two lines actually. Like I think the best line in the movie is, he after he reveals he says the Los Alamos Manhattan Project Trinity thing. Hammer says, "Why didn't you tell me?" Something along those lines. And the other guy says, "Well, if you knew, you wouldn't have acted any differently." And then he just kind of has this distraught look on his face as the guy leaves. And somebody says something, or he says "What should we do with him?" And he's like, leave him in hell, or let him rot in hell, this or that. And I kind of wonder if at least thematically, maybe he didn't get resurrected. He's in hell. The movie takes place in hell, and maybe the unleashing of hell in its full extent is when she opens the box. But it does have a very devilish theme.
I think the theme that the man talking about resurrection was supposed to reinforce was actually just that guy talks in a lot of classical allusions. Like later we see him again, and he's talking about Medusa's head and Lot's wife, and that's just one of his character quirks. Like at the beginning, he says, "You cannot wake her up because that would be resurrection."
I don't think that they thought that deeply about the classical allusions. I think they were just trying to have fun with the script. But I do think that the ones they allude to specifically, they all, there's Pandora's box, there's, the various women, there's kind of an Adam and Eve thing, especially at the end. Medusa's head is this thing you look at, Lot's wife looking back turns into a pillar of salt. These all share something in common of a woman fucking things up. They're kind of childlike, deceiving nature, and then looking into things you don't want to know. That is shared by all the myths there. And so if those have a thematic connection, then it would only make sense in terms of a formal structure that the resurrection would too, or else that would be a plot hole.
I guess the other reference he makes that I can remember is Cerberus barking with all his heads at the gates of hell, which also he barks at like the gates of Greek and Roman hell, and that's ruled by Pluto. And then there's presumably plutonium in the box. But no women in there, I guess. I was just going to say perhaps Aphrodite relates to the themes of looking back at things and being a woman, but I guess that works. Orpheus, you could also go for.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's a reoccurring theme. Oedipus gouging out his eyes. The theme of forbidden knowledge or Pandora opening the box is like a mainstay of Western narrative. Probably one of the oldest themes there is. They certainly
Yeah.
had a rich tapestry of like immediately recognizable references they could use. This wasn't reaching for like Prong's revenge or anything where it's like, what? Audience has to go look it up now. Who was the wife of so and so, and why were they doing this? Like these were all tip of your tongue, on the ball references that everyone knows.
Which is crazy because back in like the ancient times, they barely had any knowledge at all. So I
Disagree.
don't know why they had to
Yeah,
forbid so much of it.
it's very weird that forbidden knowledge would be such a theme in the ancient world.
I think people just like it because it's spooky.
Yeah, I mean, it is like there's a reason our greatest horror writer, Lovecraft, is just this for 20 pages straight, building and crescendo, and then the exact same thing again in the next short story, and then that exact same thing again in the next short story. Like, there's a reason this theme is timeless, and it's because it's spooky.
I mean, that leads me to believe that whatever horrible forbidden knowledge they had was probably destroyed so as to keep us
Nice.
from finding it again.
They did it. They saved us all. Thank God. They actually knew the secret to making nuclear weapons way back then, but at that point they called it platonium, and he decided not to write that one down in his dialogues, saving civilization for thousands of
Yeah,
years.
that's one of the esoteric teachings. I mean, there were a lot of. I mean, secret knowledge has always been a big thing, and at least in the
Right.
West. I mean, there's secrets of any religion where you have to be initiated into the mystery cults before you know them.
Yeah.
Or I guess like the what was it? The Pythagoreans. I think they were guarding the secret of the square root of two.
Whoa!
Yeah, because that like undermines their entire worldview, and they didn't. I mean, I think the Platonic math cult kind of figures out how to deal with it, but mostly for them, it's like just this horrific secret that they didn't want the uninitiated to know.
You look inside the box bursting with fire and whistling, screaming wind, and it's just a square root sign written over two.
Yeah,
Well, to be fair, like asymmetrical knowledge is one of the purest forms of power. Like there's a reason like a lot of math and like scientific discoveries that you'd think would be like really basic, kind of obvious. Like generally the more useful yet obvious something is, the official discovery always winds up being weirdly later than you would expect. So probability theory, you don't get like written accounts of probability theory till like the 17th 18th century, like shockingly late. Anyone, like stuff that you think like you could just deduce that out mentally in like 800 BC and it would be stupid easy, and yet it took till the 1700s or whatnot. But then you think, oh, anyone who did that, anyone who figured out how probability works and developed a precise theory of it and could consistently tell the difference between 50% and 51%, they aren't telling a soul about that because they've discovered the secret to winning at gambling. So
Hence why gamblers to this very day keep a slide rule with a Bayes rule printed on it so they can go figure things out.
but you see stuff like that a lot where especially in the early modern period, you find like a lot of scientists or figures in letters or mathematics who just so happen to make an incredible fortune gambling. And it's like, oh, they probably did discover a lot about probability theory, but they didn't publish it. They used it to get rich, and it's been theorized that a lot of stuff like that happens with like stuff related to navigation or other like properties of like navigating off of stars and stuff, because if you can do that, you have a massive advantage in like trade and warfare. So that all kind of gets buried or gets discovered, but it's a state secret, so
Yeah.
it gets lost.
I imagine those geniuses of the past were actually just really good at counting cards because they had such big brains to do all that math. Probably helps you with gambling as well. That's my guess.
Yeah, like the French court was notorious for it. John Law, who founded the Mississippi Company, which may have been responsible for the financial crisis that may have caused the French Revolution. He had made his fortune gambling. Voltaire famously was involved in a conspiracy to rig the lottery or corner the market on the lottery. And there were a few other things like that. Some people say it was just innocent, like, oh, he and his friends realized that they could do this with the thing that was being put out, but like, why were they specifically able to do it and no one else did it? They probably came up with a way to make it all happen that way. So you have lots of figures along that line. If you watch Barry Lyndon, the figure of the gentleman gambler, who is he cheating, is he not? No one really knows, but he's developing a fortune this way. Like that's something of a reoccurring figure in the era.
Well, staying with that topic of scientists, I guess, I'm not really convinced of the idea that this movie does a particularly good job of tying together the urge to discover things scientifically with the urge to discover things as a private detective. I mean, basically, the connection is that the MacGuffin they're trying to discover is a scientific artifact that was produced by some really good scientists.
There are
Are there
other
any other?
parallels as well.
Yeah.
For example, this is the one of the few, if not the only, it wouldn't be the only, but it's one of the few detective stories that doesn't have like a quest giver. Like the girl who draws Max Hammer into the entire investigation, like tips him off that something is happening at all, like dies instantly, and he could just walk away from it. Like no one's, it's not, he hasn't signed a contract. No one's offering him money or anything. It isn't like any of the hundreds of detective stories where the detective got embarrassed or is being blackmailed or has to solve it, or he's been drawn into this through what he thought was a simple job, but now he's the most likely suspect for the murder and the cops are going to pin it on him. Like, no, Max could walk away. The cops are telling him to walk away. Everyone's telling him to walk away. There's nothing tying him to the case that he has to stick around. Quite the opposite. He doesn't think there's any money in it at all. Like, he hasn't been promised any money. There's really a hint that there's a lot of money lying around.
Well, you had me convinced for a minute there, and then you mentioned that there actually is a quest giver, and she just dies. And that's not so, that's not so uncommon in noir fiction. Oftentimes, you have the person who hires you for the job, and then halfway through, you're like, maybe I'm not working for them anymore. Maybe I'm working for someone else. Maybe they're a criminal, and I want to bring them to justice. Maybe they died, and I need to figure out that now. And maybe someone else will pay me. And I think for a lot of the movie, it's not really clear what Mike Hammer's motivations are. I think it's not really clear. It's not really supposed to be clear to the character himself whether he's driven by like a pursuit of knowledge or whether he's trying to avenge Christina, or whether, as he says at some point, it seems like something really big is going on. And so if he can get a small sliver of something really big, that could also be really big. So he might have just found this thread and he's like, I know there are people with a lot of money at the end of this thread, so I'm gonna follow it. Which is also, there are several other noir stories where the guy is getting himself embroiled in the situation because he's thinking, all this knowledge I'm gathering could be very valuable in certain ways.
It's just that's true, but usually, like you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't just have the detective remain a free agent because it's not as narratively interesting. Like usually, you want the detective who's this suave professional to also only be romantically attached to this person he's investigating for. Or you want the detective to also only be framed for murder. Or you want the detective to to expect a huge payoff, or you want him to think there's a lot of money, or you want like the Maltese Falcon where there's a lot of money, he's been hired for the job, and his partner got murdered investigating it, so he needs to avenge his partner. Like, you want to layer up the personal attachments of your main character, because that's what's emotionally compelling. That's how you can
Right.
turn like kind of a generic detective story into like a drama, like get the character involved, and also all of a sudden it's not, formulaic. It's an actual drama that might draw the audience in. Whereas Hammer, he remained shockingly like unattached to the story, like could walk away at a moment, right up until Velda is kidnapped, and that's after he's learned the secret, and that's after he's discovered all this stuff and realized that he should have been walking away this whole time. And I think that's really thematically important, that he's not attached to the story and he could walk away, and he doesn't really owe the girl who died anything. In fact, he helped her, and she was tremendously thankful to him. And even if he had given up at that point, well, he was important and helped her out along the way.
Yeah, and I mean, he could give his information to the police. I guess maybe it's implied he doesn't think the police are worth anything, and they'll just do nothing. So.
Yeah, and it's strongly implied also he doesn't really have a sense of honor. Like, that's that's a major genre theme, is the idea of this hard-boiled detective. He's scruff, he's street tough, he's maybe mean, he's maybe womanizing, all this stuff, but he has a code of personal honor. If you give him the job, he's gonna do it, or he can't leave an innocent be alone behind enemy lines, or if something happens to someone, he has to avenge it. He maybe looks like a mean, tough son of a bitch, and the street smart, gruff man, but in his heart of hearts, he's still a cowboy, or he's still like a chivalric knight. Like, he's still gonna risk his life for these abstract ethics. And one of the first things we're taught about Hammer is that he is not like that. He makes his money seducing women, then having his assistants seduce their husbands, and then mutually blackmailing them with threats of adultery to like keep them paying up private investigator fees. Like, worst of the worst, not just like a divorce and adultery chaser, but a divorce and adultery creator.
Well, I have to disagree with your read there, because I think he's still exactly the scoundrel with a heart of gold that we've seen so many times in Noir. Because, there's just a big difference between when you're blackmailing people for adultery and when you're just straight up murdering people. And I think he takes several moves in this movie where he is basically working on the side of justice, even though he gets paid by doing this incredibly sleazy job. He's still going out there, and he wants to find out who did it. Possibly he's willing to be bought off, but we all have our prices. And he also doesn't like it when his friends get killed or kidnapped, and he'd like to get back at people for that.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
But I was going to say, I mean, yes, but I think like just a massive amount of the motivation for him and for the audience, and like what's really driving the dramatic tension, is curiosity. Like, there's this incredible, huge mystery that he was thrown into at the start with a really charismatic girl who maybe was mad, maybe not, maybe involved
We've
in
all
all
been
this,
there,
and
Mike.
she was murdered, and it's like, and he isn't doing it necessarily to avenge her. He barely knew her, and he really didn't do
She
much of
had a
anything for
pretty
him.
name.
What was her name?
He wants to know.
Christina.
Uh,
Yeah.
No, like, it's such a compelling mystery. Like, even the
Right.
like, that opening just grabs you.
Yeah.
And it grabs you out of nowhere, and it probably has like any, like, you could tell this exact story with
Worse
a girl
opening? Yeah.
walking into the private detective's office and hiring him to solve something, and then she's dead, and then
Right.
that does it. Like, it's not as if amazing detective stories haven't been told with girl walks into a private detective's office. Like, Chinatown is one of the best noir films of all time, and that's how Chinatown starts. Girl walks into a private detective office, and that's 20 years after this film. It's not like it had to have this opening, or like you couldn't sell the story. That's a core thematic part of the story, is that it just jumped into his lap this suddenly, and it was that compelling a story that he had to keep following it.
I think there's an inversion to it that, because it's not like a private detective's office is a place where the detective is, and then she walks in there to find the detective. Where in this case, he's driving and she's just stopping a car to get away from these people, and then she just kind of falls in the lap. But it's he runs into her, and and then he's mad about the car, and he just says get in, and then she's sitting there waiting for him to like open the door because she wants him to be a gentleman or something, just expecting that, and then he's like, oh, okay, and he opens it, and she gets in, and then they drive off, and then as they're driving, the credits are going backwards, and I think all of that kind of speaks to to me it screams hell, but yeah, there's something fundamentally, the whole thing, like that whole formula is turned on its head. It's still girl walks into a private detective's office, but it's the opposite in terms of number and distance. Okay, I would like to launch into a wild associative tangent that I don't think can be resolved, but I think that the square root of 2 being what was in the box fits really well, and I think it fits for a few reasons. Although they're kind of private hot takes. So before the ending of the movie, the woman, Pandora, whatever the hell her real name is, she says, I want half. And the guy says, this is something you can't split up. And that's even implying like it's not even liquid. He couldn't sell it. And so she kills him to take all of it. And so there's an issue of number here. And I'm going to read a passage here from it is.
You can't fool me. I've taken a trigonometry class. I know you can have the square root of 2 over 2. So, but go on.
Well, before I read this passage, I'm going to read a different one from the podcast's favorite website, Wikipedia. And I could read the URL, but it's going to be short enough. I'm just going to paraphrase it. So apparently there was a disciple of Pythagoras who figured this out. He figured out that the diagonal of a unit square was incommensurable with the edge, the unit length. So he proved that there's no existing rational number that can accurately depict that proportion. And that fucked them up. And so according to legend, they were so traumatized by this that they murdered him to stop him from spreading the idea. And so here's a passage from Joe Sachs' introduction to Socrates and the Sophists, where it kind of goes off on this also wild associative tangent about rhetoric and what he coins as eidetic number, which he gets from Jacob Klein, who is a philosopher, and he worked on kind of the history of number. And there's this idea in the Greek conception of number is that they had different ideas of number. Aristotle points out there is a difference between the numbers that are counted and the numbers by which we count. The primary meaning of the word arithmos was not the latter, but the former. A dozen eggs or 4 horses were themselves numbers of perceptible things. The numbers 12 and 4, as mathematics deals with them, are arithmoi as well, numbers of something. But in their case, numbers of identical thinkable things, mere units assumed to be indivisible, and with no other characteristics except for countability. Eidetic numbers would be a third kind, not perceptible with the bodily senses, but not undifferentiated items of thought either. They would be collections of eidai, intelligible things with a differentiated content. And then the hot take is that, kind of secretly, or Aristotle alludes to this, it's not in Plato's written dialogues, but kind of the oral tradition, the center of Platonism is the theory of forms, and the hot take is that, the forms are ultimately numbers, these eidetic numbers, and, it kind of comes back to this. Okay, so that sets up the wild associative tangent is in terms of remembrance and love. I think you can reduce both love and memory down to number, where they're kind of paradoxical unions with number, but fundamentally memory, to remember something, is it's a unity across distance, where distance is something of, it's not necessarily in real 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, distance is divisible, it's continuous, time is continuous, space is continuous. When you remember something, it's yes, it's far away in distance, but you are now united to it phenomenologically somehow. It's a kind of a paradoxical bridging of distance and time or space. And something modernity does is it shrinks the world. Science shrinks the world with cars, telephones, movies that depict the past and such. All of these things are more immediately accessible than they were before. And then there's love, and I don't think Hammer loves anybody in the movie. And love is union across multiplicity, which is a different conception of number. It's in terms of it's discrete. It's in quantized units. You are two, and when you love something, you unite with it in a certain way. The two become one flesh is how God frames it in the start of Genesis. And I think there's something there in terms of why the hell does she want to be remembered, and why would he want to remember her? First off, what is this distance that's being bridged? And it's sort of and it's across death too. It's after she dies, she needs to be remembered, so you can find some key to open up this great secret, But she wants to be remembered. She wants to be, in union with the world after her death, so that she can give them this gift of this key and whatever it is she's carrying. And why would did she know what it was? Did she want it to be unleashed on the world? Was she setting all this up? Who knows? But it's there's something paradoxical there, and I think that terminates the wild associations. But if you take those two things and their incommensurability, that just kind of circles around the square root of two things so well that I'm just going to go with that. That's what's in the box.
I feel like Mike Hammer towards the end of the movie, and I wish I could just solve this mystery with violence, I wish I could just slap a guy around and go, what is the square root of 2?
I am very, very curious what audience you think is going to listen to that. You realize this is going on YouTube, right?
Scholars and gentlemen, sir. That is our audience.
Yeah, I think this is on the nose thematically for what I would like this to be, is going on wild digressions like that. That's the audience I want to court.
All right, so
I don't think the Pythagoreans themselves.
Wikipedia, which is sometimes involved in the itemized list. All right, we'll keep working on that one.
But no, you're right. The thematic putting aside the number theory and the mystical faces of God, the thematic element of exactly why is it significant that he remembers her. They repeat, remember me, so many times, and yet thematically, it's not as if we come back to the end and discover something unique or precious about Christina. It's not as if...
Well, she sent him some mail, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not... usually if you have, that is a theme in a detective story, you're tearing away the layers and you're discovering the person that's died. This is a recurring thing in detective stories. You see it in P.D. James, you see it in a lot of, especially modern detective stories, where a big part of the mystery isn't just discovering who killed the person who's dead by the end of Act 1. It's discovering, who is this person that's passed away? What is this mystery? And, you'll have parents trying to solve the mystery of their murdered child, and then discovering that their child wasn't who they thought they were, and they were involved in all this different stuff, or following it deeper and discovering, no, their child was who they thought they were framed for this, and their knowledge of the seeming incongruity between the child's death and the loved one's conception of the child is actually the key piece of evidence. Or you're discovering this tragedy of this figure, you're discovering something that the dead person valued, that now the detective who's investigating it comes to value, and that's something that they can protect, and they can keep the dead person alive kind of through that work, or the dead person was investigating a mystery themselves, and the detective, through investigating their death, discovers this mystery and then has to solve it and finish the work of the victim. And but we don't really know that much about Christina by the end. She's not as much as it's kiss me deadly and this figure of the girl coming out of the bushes and needing you to save her, and she's involved in something that goes all the way to the gates of madness itself, and for a central theme to be remember me, I don't know, I'm kind of waiting for one of you to say, what are you talking about? This was touched upon, she blah 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 and blah 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 and blah 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 blah, and I just missed this. this theme, but she remains kind of a void by the end, which is strikes me as very odd, especially with a single male as the main character, but then Mike Hammer's relationship with women and his suffering secretary Velda, who presumably by the end he'll marry if they survive the fires on the beach. Like maybe that's the theme, that it's like Mike getting over himself and his thing with women. But
I think you did miss something. I think that the movie very obviously refers to Minos' paradox, where Minos says to Socrates, "And how are you going to search for the nature of virtue when you don't know at all what it is, Socrates? Which of all the things you don't know will you set up as target for your search? And even if you actually come across it, how will you know that it is the thing which you don't know?" And there's a line in the movie that basically asks the same thing of Hammer, where it's like, actually, I think there's a few of them, where they're like, well, like, what are you looking for? And he just, I don't know. And then, eventually it's revealed to be trouble, and then it's revealed to be Cthulhu. And then I've revealed it to be the square root of 2. But it's, there is that theme of it's, we're searching for something, we don't know what, we don't know why. And the Platonic resolution to this is the theory of remembrance, is that, the soul is immortal and repeatedly incarnated. And so, the soul has this eternal knowledge, and then we've just forgotten it. We've forgotten how to see that. And so when we're learning, we're not really just getting it, like getting new things into our souls. We're just remembering, we're recovering what's been forgotten. Remember me. I think that solves all your problems, Sir Kulak. I think that ties it all together.
Well, I'd like to, that draws my attention back to one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is where Mike Hammer is trying to look at the guy who he's been trying to track, who killed Christina, and all he was able to see was this guy's shoes. And then I believe it's during the scene where he's going to be truth serumed, and he's trying to look at the guy again, but he's tied down so he can't. And we see the guy's shoes again, and the guy says, like, "Why are you trying to look at me? You will just see someone you do not know." And I thought that was good. I also wanted to tie that back into your like sort of disappointment if he was actually selling the box to the Russians, because it's it would be a letdown if he was just some obviously like Russian guy like, "Yes, I will get the box." But no, he's just some guy.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, the movie almost seems to touch on we sort of covered this, but it's kind of the sacredness of mystery, is that like if we could recognize that guy, it would ruin all sense of like what drives the movie. There's that fundamental unknowability to it, and confusion, and just even the darkness of the lighting in the genre. And once the answers are given, which they're not, but when the box is open, all hell breaks loose. And I think that just kind of that fits right into what he's saying, is that just it's not it's a foolish quest to try to look at this thing that's just going to be further mystery. You should just embrace the mystery, resign yourself to it, or you're going to end the world.
And I think, Kulak, there is a more concrete answer to your question, because it's like sort
Mine
of
wasn't
revealed.
concrete.
It's literally about abstract objects. It cannot be concrete.
We literally have to bring in Plato's theory of form to decipher your theory. We're literally outside of concrete reality. We are into the forms. We are outside of the physical.
Well, I don't draw a distinction between them. I think there is no physical
We
divorce
know
from
you
the forms.
But the answer is, it's kind of revealed who Christina was, sort of. And I sort of like missed the dialogue myself, because a lot of the like leads and puzzles in this movie are, when I watched it the first time, I was like, yeah, I understand what's going on in this movie. And then I watched it the second time and I was like, I kind of don't really understand what's going on in this movie. But we'll get to that later, hopefully. But there is some sort of line where like it's sort of established that Christina was maybe the girlfriend of someone who was wrapped up in this plot, and then the feds were keeping her in the insane asylum under like protection, and then the protection failed, so she had to flee, or they were keeping her elsewhere, and then she was kidnapped and taken to the asylum, and then she had to flee. And so she is like, it is sort of figured out how she's involved in this mystery in a way that isn't particularly important or satisfying, It's just like, yes, we've tied it together.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like there isn't a satisfying like, oh, this is what she was trying to achieve, or this is the person who she was, or oh, now we intimately understand like this is how she got tied up in this, and this isn't what she wanted, or this is what she wanted. Like we have these incredibly like specific details, like her love of poetry, and like even a specific poem that's important to her, and like these features, but like there isn't this comprehensive image of a person that comes out of it, which like as someone who's read a lot of detective fiction, took a course on detective fiction, that's like an interesting choice for something that's so comprehensively written otherwise. Like usually that's like if you watch any detective show on Netflix or something, that's almost the first thing they do is they want you to, by the end of it, have a real feel for who the victim is and why they matter to various people and what they wanted and what they didn't get, and how the detective solving the case kind of achieves it in a way that's morally redemptive, or adds a button or gives a moral victory to the victim. Like, oh, he did the thing that by solving the mystery he also saved the child that the lady was trying to protect, and she lives on through that kind of thing. Whereas like, yeah, they're like, even the personal connections that are there, it's like yanked out from under you. Like, no, the roommate who was emotionally attached to her was a plant by the villain, and she wasn't really her roommate at all, and stuff like the emotional connections are ripped away from you.
There are a bunch of great noir stories that are kind of just like a muddle in this specific way, but I do think this one like is even more in on the dimension that you're describing than most of
That
them.
reminds me a lot of what. Okay, well, just shortly, there was this atmosphere in '80s TV where just there were detective stories or really like murder mysteries, but the murders were set up instrumentally, where somebody would die
Oh
and
yeah.
nobody gave a shit about the person, the victim. It was just this violence that happened, and the effect of the violence of the community, just what a horrific thing a murder actually is, was not addressed because it was just a setup to the story. It was an excuse to have a mystery, and we're gonna find the killer. We're gonna revel in the violence, and so I think that in this movie, in that theme of remember me, I mean, you could read it that way of remember that a person died here. It's not just about the mystery. It's not just about the story. It's about a real person who lived in the world, who was mourned. Kind of, she didn't have a lot of friends. She was isolated, and we should remember what happened to her because that's a significant event that sets up the movie. And she's so just compelling, even just from her name and the way she carries herself. Side note, there's this whole thing you were saying about the character, something male, and it says what she is and how she knows. That's dumb. I think the more fun reading is that we'll just take the Kabbalistic determinism and say her name's Christina, which according to Wikipedia just means like Christian. It's just a Latinized way of saying that. And so whatever we're remembering, whatever she represents, let's say nominatively, is Christianity. And if they're in hell, then it's a remembrance of her to ties in with the whole resurrection theme, and then Adam and Eve at the end. It's kind of and actually, come to think of it, movie's kind of like The Fall, isn't it? I mean, this is obvious, right? But it's not just that they look like Adam and Eve, but it's like they've eaten the fruit, and now they're like looking in horror at the consequences.
And I guess when they torture Christina to death, she is like suspended up in the air, and that's like a crucifixion, and that relates to the resurrection there. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, it does kind of like, if she's supposedly, if she's like kind of a stand-in for like the detective that came before, that the state of Max of Hammer and Velda by the end is kind of the state of her at the start, where there's this horrifying mystery that is like going to eat them alive, and there's not they can do about it, and that's so much bigger than them. There can't be a happy ending. Like, that's kind of how Christina starts out, like, just trying to run away from it.
You know, there's something I've been thinking about the ending, which is like it ends with this, very very good scene of the burning house and whatnot. But also, like, is it just gonna burn that house? Because if so, that's not very scary.
It seemed
Like,
to be
house is on
expanding like
fire.
ambiguously. It's sort of like we don't know, and that makes it all the more horrifying. Because I mean,
Yeah.
like you assume,
Like it could just you assume it could just swallow the house and like maybe it irradiated them, like it seared Hammer's hand in like the weird way it did like after the fact. So it's like, oh, they might already be dead from having been exposed to this, or like might continue and like poison the entire coastline, or it might just be an endless change reaction that's the end of the earth, or it might continue and keep expanding until the military responds with some horrifying like containment method that like levels half the coast.
yeah, I think something like that has to be the case, or else the police wouldn't be so concerned about it, and the other people wouldn't want it so much. It has to have like some world-shattering power, or at least a city, or else
Like it could just like burn down and like Hammer and Velda are dead because of it, and then it winds up in the hands of whichever unscrupulous force knows enough about it to pick it up out of the dirt. Like that's horrifying enough because it implies that whoever winds up with it is like going to use it again or going to use it to its full potential. Like it doesn't have to be that it's like it doesn't have to be a moment of destruction itself. Like the implication is that it's unleashed. Like it isn't that necessarily just it being unboxed in the house is ending the world in and of itself, but it's what it symbolizes, it being unleashed on the world. Like not just that, oh, it's gonna kill us. It's no, we have to live with this now.
I guess so. I think the implication of opening the box is like it's going to be spent now. Like you can't go pick it up and turn it into a nuclear weapon because it's already let loose its potential power on destroying this random.
No, we only see it. We only see it like gaining power, and like the few times it's opened, like it burns or destroys someone, and then it closes, and like there's no hint that it has like a limit.
I think that's just in the nature of like the chain reaction. And you opened the box too long. Well, great. Now it's probably melted the box. It's probably just going on its merry destructive way. But I suppose it could still be. Maybe it's a really good box. You know?
there has to be some box to contain all of that. It kind of reminds me of Mary's womb holding Christ, where it's like the walls of reality that now like hold God inside of them, where it doesn't make any fucking sense, and it's just kind of horrifying. There's a Yeats poem on it where it's like she's pregnant and she's walking around, and it's like she could be doing the stuff that like other pregnant women are doing, but she's got God inside of her, and there's like what could you possibly make of that? There's no way to comprehend it.
It reminded me a lot of the Ark of the Covenant, similar random box that can hold God inside of it.
Very similar ending.
I was specifically trying not to mention that so we didn't spoil all of the
We'll make it backwards, much like the credits.
Isn't something that can be spoiled. It has to be
Yeah, it
experienced.
is. Well, that's also true of everything.
I'm wondering if they took. I mean, was that an intentional homage to this movie?
I imagine it might have been, It seems like the sort of movie. This movie was pretty influential, and so that movie might have gone like, "Oh, I love that box. We got to get one of those."
So I was reading, and then scribbly there was like, "Wait, I've heard of a box like that before," but I read it in my Quora one time. Oh, you've got to tell us about this. We know nothing about that here in Hollywood.
I found the Yeats poem, and I don't want to talk about it necessarily, but in the spirit of alienating the audience, I'm just going to read it. It's really pretty. The Mother of God by William Butler Yeats. The threefold terror of love, a fallen flare, through the hollow of an ear, wings beating about the room, the terror of all terrors that I bore, the heavens in my womb. Had I not found content among the shows, every common woman knows, chimney corner, garden walk, or rocky cistern where we tread the close, and gather all the talk? What is this flesh I purchased with my pains, this fallen star my milk sustains, this love that makes my heart's blood stop, or strikes a sudden chill into my bones, and bids my hair stand up?
Nice. That would be a good place to end it, but I have more things to say about Kiss Me Deadly. The things I was going to reflect on is about how these sort of like fake puzzles and circuitous leads that are encountered in the movie. And one thing I wonder, I've never read this book that Kiss Me Deadly, the movie, is based on. And I think, honestly, if I were to really sit down and think about it, I think it was probably like a good book, and then it was turned into a worse script, and then the director and the actors just did such a good job on that worse script that it became a great movie. And so I just get that feeling from like watching the movie and going, much of this does not make sense or flow together, but boy howdy if it isn't a fantastic time. And the other thing I thought about is that Mike Hammer reminds me a lot of like a player character in D&D, because he has this ostensible mystery he has to pursue, and he gets all these various leads, and he starts pursuing them, and he's just sort of driving towards the conclusion, because that's the thing you do under one reading of his motivations, and he's just sort of finding clues as they appear, as is convenient. And of course, near the end of the movie, he gets tired of even doing his like standard detective thing, and he starts bribing people, and when the bribes don't work, he starts doing intimidate checks using violence, and then eventually the story is completed and he levels up with radiation poisoning.
Interesting rating.
Yeah.
Like the frustration in Hammer is definitely like a major part of like the theme, like the fact that he's getting more violent, more unethical. Like at one point he just walks into the LA like country club and like threatens to beat the shit out of the guy behind the counter. Like not even a guy who's attached to the mystery or any way or like at all in the game, just like an old man who works at a country club. No, you're gonna open the locker from here. I'm gonna kick your ass.
Yeah, listen, we don't have time for this now. It's the end of the movie. You better open this gosh darn locker. I'll give you
like
one of
that.
these. Ooh, a kitty cat.
Like that element is definitely like part of it, that he's like starting to resemble both the cops and the villains in that way. Like just out of raw force of the mystery, he's willing to like start breaking all these norms, and that's before Velda is kidnapped, or like there's any real like stakes that it would be like, oh, this is escalating it for him. Maybe because his mechanic, I think, is dead at that point. That might be motivating him, but but no, it's kind of interesting that he gets motivated then intensely to solve the mystery, like just kind of being morally infected by like all the stuff he's witnessing and seeing that hasn't really affected him yet. I want to watch it again and just try to figure out what all like the character motivations are of like the side characters. Like there's that crooked sports betting guy, and it's like, how did you get wrapped up in Manhattan Project, Los Alamos Trinity stuff? Like you rig horse bets.
It's just the connections in the underground. Criminal underworld LinkedIn probably is where these guys got associated.
It kind of reads to me that there's something like there's a take on like why swearing is bad or why we swear, where it's like the idea is that like linguistically, if you're saying naughty words, which we will not on this podcast, they don't like point to something directly like a set meaning so much as we'll bleep it or we'll reverse it. They don't point to like a set instantiated meaning so much as it's like they're kind of like a miscellaneous box of everything that's outside of our categories that we access when it's like we need to point, like we're so emotionally or we're just like we're not trying to make a logical statement so much as we're just we need to access into this like little secret corner where we hide all the stuff we just don't want to think about with the way we've parsed the world into objects, and so when you say boop or boop, you're digging into that, and that's connected to seediness and the underworld, the shady characters in the city who the polis, they serve a function. They sort of they take over markets. Something like sports betting or the mafia will always emerge in any place just based off the supply and demand, but it's something that we don't access. We don't look at it. We'll have the police kind of form a parasitic relationship depending on how expensive it is, or maybe they'll take over those roles in an official capacity, but there's something kind of hidden and seedy about it, much like a curse word, which our protagonist, he seems to sort of, at least compared to other more heroic Noir figures, he's more steeped in this world. He's sort of, he's not the noble policeman who then goes in, as an outsider to investigate this from afar or to stop it. It's, he is in the underworld. He's one of these seedy characters. He knows the sports bettors. He has this weird, he has his secretary seduce people for money and then just kind of, plays them off of them. It's almost like he is a curse word. He is, he almost incarnates the sort of paradox, which also, cursing paradoxes, miscellaneous categories, it ties in very nicely to the kind of poetic device the movie uses as, like poems are always, not always, but, one of the things you can do in poetry is kind of set up things that don't make sense. You conclude them with a statement that's just, it's a paradox, but it aims in direction. It's not just like it's distinct from a plot hole where it's just like, oh, this doesn't make sense. This is stupid. This has ruined the logic of the plot. This is more, paradox is something that, you can, there's some resolution, there's something it's, kind of circling around and it's just in the darkness and we can't see it. We can approach it and we can see there's kind of like a black hole around it, but we can't cross the event horizon. We can just kind of mire or, just kind of be in awe at the mystery of it. That's what a poem does. And I think this movie kind of has that fundamentally poetic structure, being an imitation of the poem Remember.
Well, with that segue, do you want to talk about the poem Remember Me?
Sure. Well, it's just called Remember, and it's by Christina Rossetti, which, Christina is the name of the girl, so that makes sense. So she wrote the poem, huh? Crazy. Yeah, I could read it. Let's see. Remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I have turned to go yet turning stay. Remember me when no more day by day you tell me of our future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand. It will be late to counsel then or pray. Yet if you should forget me for a while, afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts that I once had, better by far you should forget and smile than that you should remember and be sad.
Now I've got you tied down on a bed, and I'm injecting you with truth serum. I'm saying, what the hell does that mean? What's the point of that? How does that relate to our nuclear secrets? Tell me, Mike Hammer. We must know before we kill you.
I forgot.
Oh, I guess maybe there was parts of that poem where, like, maybe you should actually forget me if it's gonna be bad. So,
like, thematically, the poem works really well. Like, it's both, like, it's an element because he reads that specific poem. He, there's the specific line that refers to, don't tell me it's, for if in darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts that I once had, like, that line leads him to realize that she swallowed the key, which is a very, very, like strained reading. Like, you really have to work, like, even if you're like, okay, she's telling me this poem is important, like, how does this lead to the next clue? Like, that would be very hard to be like, oh, the body in darkness and corruption leave a vestige of a thought that I once had. Like, oh, she swallowed the key. That's I gotta check the body. Like, that's like, that's like, I'm looking at it as a writer, and it's like no, that's like coincidental plot device. Like, the significance is far more like the final line, like her giving him permission to just walk away and forget and smile and just like remember the time they had together. Like, that seems far more significant than oh, she references corruption, and that leads to her dead body, which leads to the key.
Well, I mean, that's really funny because it's like he's like, like he's a doofus and he causes all these problems in seeking it out. It's like the movie is predicated on him doing the wrong thing and investigating. And it's like just even the way like the syntax of that line is set up, right? It's I guess it'd be subjunctive. Like it's that line for if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts that I once had. That's not a sentence. That's just a fragment. It's a dependent clause that is setting up the rest of it. And he's just taking this, it's not a statement. It's basically meaningless. It's for, if this happens, okay, if then what? And then she's saying like, yeah, it's better by far you should forget and smile than that you should remember and be sad. He just ignores that. And I think there's something in like even at the start when like he picks up the poetry book, it's like, for some reason he's drawn to it. Like he kind of searches around the house. I mean, he doesn't even, he just kind of goes in there and he's like, yeah, I know. Well, first off, it's like, they're like, what do they say? It's like, oh, the police already searched it. And he's like, I want to search it. And then he goes in there and he talks to the guy for like 10 seconds, walks in the room, grabs the book. He's like, huh, and then he leaves. And then he just like, he's kind of glancing at it and he's like, yeah, whatever. But you can tell he's not interested. And then he gets home and he's like, this is stupid. I hate poetry. He just kind of sets it down. And then like, and then an hour later in the movie, it comes back and then he has a girl read it. He's like, yeah, look at this. And he's like, oh, I got it. I'm gonna get that key now. But he just, it's...
To be fair,
I don't think he knows how to read.
To be fair, earlier in the film, like she does establish, oh, my name's Christina. I was just like my favorite writer, Christina Rossetti. So the fact that he'd be drawn to like the book written by Christina Rossetti, like that's thematically established that like, oh, that's something that like she establishes like significant, and like you kind of think, okay, he's gonna find like something written in the back page or like hidden somewhere, and it's like nope. But then she like sends him the letter that says, "Remember me," and he's like, oh yeah, that poem she mentioned was important. She's reminding me that's important. And, yeah, the one piece of physical evidence I have, I should check that out. But
well,
like,
then is she actually asking to be remembered? Like it feels like you could read that one of two ways. She's saying like, okay, like I think the more obvious reading is she's saying like, hey, remember me so you can solve this mystery, right? And then that that's what unleashes hell upon the world. But maybe she's saying like, remember me as in read the poem, understand it, and then remember to forget me. It's like she wants some remembrance, but then she, if you get the full poem, it's, there's that paradoxical nature of it, which, again, union and multiplicity would be something like love of, remembrance and forgetting coming together of like, yes, remember her, but, don't get rid of the thoughts she had, the secrets, and just go smile and be happy. And in your forgetting and being happy, that would be honoring her memory.
Well, I just want to say that it's presumably really hard to make the answer to a detective mystery hinge on like a real poem that somebody wrote about like remembering loved ones. So I give a pass to the writer for like, yes, in the body. Okay, you gave it a shot, buddy. Fair enough. But I also want.
Well, I don't know what he was thinking with the square root of 2 thing. That doesn't make any sense.
I also I want to mention that Mike Hammer, boy, sometimes he's really effective at being a detective, but sometimes he's just making bad detective moves. Like he gets into the house using a pure charisma check, and then he just kind of looks around vaguely and takes a book, and he doesn't even look really hard at the book or anything. And at one point he gets jumped by this guy who's like trying to rough him up or something, and instead of like interrogating that guy, he just throws him down some stairs and then keeps doing whatever he was doing. So
yeah, that
just sort of fumbles
blew my
around.
mind that he's willing to like attack this poor Italian man and break his records, but like the guy who holds him at knife point, like
You think that guy might know
he isn't
something?
gonna be like, who hired you? Why are you doing this? What's your deal?
Instead of like a guy who was maybe friends with someone who knew someone who died. But hey, that's the Mike Hammer way of doing detective work.
I love all the shots of him just enjoying the violence. I mean, I think like the guy goes down the stairs, he's like falling, and then he's just kind of like satisfied and he walks away. but I think the one that really sticks with me is like the doctor, and the doctor character is weird because it's like okay, he finds the body and he figures out like, okay, like there must be a key in the body, and then if that was there, you would have it, and the doctor kind of has like this knowing look on his face, or like he says like yup, or he nods or something, as if it's like, yes, I've had this secret the whole time, and I was just waiting for you to come to me. You know, it kind of has like this, very feels like a quest or something. You know, he doesn't feel like a real person. And then he's like demanding money, which is, presumably maybe why he was hoarding this, but somehow he like knew that they would come for the key or that it was worth something. It's like, and then Hammer goes and he bribes him up to a point. He gives him some, and then he gives him some again, number, divisibility. And then after that, he's like, okay, no more. And actually he does that a few points in the movie. Like, it's like he'll start bribing, but then, or like he's asking him like, yeah, well, what's your price or whatever. And then, he'll set limits or he'll be vague about it. It's like he wants to bribe, but then he has kind of this ego thing about it. Who knows? But mostly it's just an excuse for violence. And then he, if I remember correctly, he's like, he insinuates like, okay, yeah, I'll give you the rest of the money, open it up. And then the guy starts to open it up, and then, he uses a pretext to, jam his hand in there. And then he's just this like shit-eating grin on his face. He's just so happy. And there's this frail old fat man, and he's just like, yeah, and that the girl there was just probably soaking wet. And God, yeah, what a cool movie.
Yeah, I think it was, I think many people think of this scene as like Mike Hammer being just incredibly malicious. But I think if you pay attention to the details of the scene, there are more things that like excuse him a little bit. One of which being it's the end of the movie and like all his friends are dying and he's really tired of playing all these games. And then he like is willing to bribe the guy. And then he's willing to increase his bribe. And then the guy is like, I'll only give it to you for a lot of money because I know that's what it's worth. And then he's like, well, no, this is so much money already. And then the guy's like, I'll put it back in my drawer. And I mean, he's already being an extremely unethical, I don't even know what the name for that guy is. Mortuary? Morgue man? Anyway, and then Mortician. And then Mike Hammer takes the initiative and jams his hand in the drawer when he's trying to put the key back away in the drawer to take the key from him so that he can go complete, this dying wish of this woman or something. So, it's sort of like it's not the most virtuous thing to do, but it's sort of like doing evil unto evil as well. This is not a sympathetic character. The old man who he like tries to bribe and then he's just so fed up that he just slaps the guy is more of a sympathetic character, but at that point he's even more fed up, and that shows you that. Anyway,
a recurring thought I had throughout the movie is that yeah, okay, I don't know what happened there, but a recurring thought was that this guy is Giga Chad, and everything he does is what Giga Chad would do if he was in that situation, which I don't think maps on perfectly, because I think Giga Chad is fundamentally virtuous, but he does have just this effortless kind of amused mastery as he goes around, where everything just kind of falls in place, like just wherever he goes, reality bends to his whim, and everybody's like fawning over him. He gets out of the car and this chick just starts making out with him, and she's like, I don't know you, but and he just kind of
like you got to learn how to say N-O to your friends, or you gotta, can you spell no?
Oh yeah, God, what a put down.
He's just like, have some self-respect.
Yeah.
Now I need to go beat up a guy by like one hit KOing him somehow to establish. So it's funny, like when everything works out for him and you're kind of rooting for him, but also when things just don't work out for him at all, it's also kind of funny.
I mean, what are there any like specifics? Like, because I think globally nothing works out for him, but like in most specific situations, he always kind of magically like gets something to where it just kind of falls in his lap. Like I can't think of a single scene where within this scene it doesn't go as planned, except for the ending.
His friend dies. He gets double-crossed by the fake roommate. There are many scenes where he's like trying to get information out of someone, and then the information he gets is like useless or it's a dead end. Things like that. The big like comeuppance thing where he learns that he's been hunting a nuclear item and he feels really spooked about that.
I mean, like even the stuff that goes wrong for him, like that's stuff that he's learned has gone wrong while he wasn't around. Like it's not like, oh, he loses. It's like, God damn it, you people couldn't keep things together while I stepped out, or
Right.
God damn it, some more idiots made the mistake of fucking with Mike Hammer.
Yeah.
Hammer,
Well,
it's
that all has to be part of your strategy. You got to take that into account. Of like, maybe I shouldn't send Nick to go get information for me because he's just gonna run around this other city and go like va va boom and then get murdered.
like fair, but like that's all stuff that like falls apart because he's not there, or like because someone made the mistake of not realizing that they were fucking with Mike Hammer, but they were like geographically like distant enough from him that's gonna take like 10-15 minutes of screen time before he can correct their mistake by fucking them up.
As himself, he's extremely capable in certain domains.
Like he's limited from divinity because he's not omnipresent.
Well, there's the thing in the beginning where he like almost dies, but almost. So I guess he is actually a Chad who can survive car crashes
without scar or like disability or anything, despite it being a fatal car crash.
Listen, you just sleep for 3 weeks and then you're fine.
Like I had $1,000 worth of equipment on me, and trust me, it takes a bit more than that. And like I wasn't decommissioned for 3 weeks. Like 90% of my body worked for the first 3 weeks.
Cars were made of firmer stuff back then, which was actually less safe, but hey, whatever. I guess there's also the period at which the goons come and ambush him, and then they actually beat him that time because the plot demands it, I guess.
Oh, wait, how did they beat him that time? Was there like a dozen of them or something?
On the beach.
There were two of them, and they had like a cudgel, I think.
Yeah, that's a cool scene because it's like he fights two guys before that when he's like going to the pool.
It's the same two guys.
And there's like two guys that gang up on him. Is it? No, I think it's like a different one because it's like he punches one out and there's like another like a skinny guy there that just immediately like runs away. And then I think when they get to him again, there's like I don't think the
skinny guy
there.
with the weird eye. He's definitely there.
Oh, okay.
At least I think so. I don't know. And then one of the goons gives a line about, "I've been practicing, so you're not going to beat me now."
Yeah. I like the shots when they're fighting on the beach where it's they have like those the punches, but they're shown first person.
Right.
And there's something similar where there's one where it's like he pulls up at the gas station and then he turns around and then it's like it's shot from the perspective of the driver and you see it going on like it's. I don't know if there's any others, but that was a really nice touch. You don't see that often.
Oh, by the way, did you catch the fact that the credits going backwards at the beginning of the film was highway writing? That's why the word order is like that.
Oh.
They're driving on a highway. It's as though you're seeing the words on the road.
And where are they
going? They're staying on the road as we drive over the road. I don't know. It's part of what makes that opening sequence just so striking and just a great opening sequence.
Anyway, it's approaching 11 here, so I might pack it in.
Yeah, I'm out of things to talk about. Kiss Me Deadly. Except it looks great. It's a great looking movie. Good job. I guess this is Jason, you got anything else you want to say about Kiss Me Deadly?
Well, no.
Okay, cool. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, I have one thing to say is that I think there's a connection. The whole movie is hypersexual. Hammer's just, he's Giga Chad, he's super sexy, and then all the girls are less sexy than him, but they all have just this, feminine, like just in their movements, let's say. Yeah, and mostly you can just tell, like, they just have this animalistic, like, lust about them the entire time. And I think a lot of that, I don't know if it's intentional, but at least to me, if, the movie having this poetic structure in terms of paradox and kind of centering around a poem. I think, central to poems traditionally is they're for mogging and for seduction. They don't work on horrors, and I think there's a lot of horrors in the movie. But besides that, there's something inherently hypersexual about poetry and the act of poetry itself. And I think in the movie being hypersexual, it does instantiate that. But that's just an analogical connection. I have nothing further to add to that.
Nice. Well, Having discussed the great opening of Kiss Me Deadly a couple of sentences ago, we can now end the podcast. Whoa, what a paradox. What a reversal. What a unity.
Sick.
Whoa. Okay.
Oh, actually, okay, one
Okay.
more thing. Lita and the Swan by William Butler Yeats. A sudden blow, the great wings beating still. Above the staggering girl, her thighs caressed. By the dark webs, her nape caught in his bill. He holds her helpless breast upon his breast. How can these terrified, vague fingers push the feathered glory from her loosening thighs? And how can body, laid in that white rush, but feel the strange heart beating where it lies? A shudder in the loins engenders there the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead, being so caught up, so mastered by the brute blood of the air. Did she put on his knowledge with his power before the indifferent beat could let her drop?
Well, that really says a lot about Kiss Me Deadly.